We've seen a few stories on English Bites about the terrible effect of bushfires. Today we talk about how they can be prevented. For a long time, people have thought that burn-offs, or the controlled burning of bushland, would help prevent bushfires. But some people are now saying that this isn't the answer.
In January 1955, South Australia experienced an extreme bushfire. 2 people died on what was dubbed Black Sunday. Flames tore through Marble Hill, razing the Governor's mansion and nearby bushland. In the decades since, there's been a constant push for controlled burn-offs to avoid similar tragedies. But some are now saying the site of that Marble Hill fire is proof that burn-offs aren't always the answer.
You can see the bare ground there, and we've got very little elevated fuel loadings here. So, I mean, there is definitely a case here to say that if an area hasn't been burnt for 50 years, there's potentially a less of a fire risk at this site than there is in an area that was burnt within the last 10 years.
Kieran Brewer has run a vegetation management business in the Mount Lofty Ranges for the past 15 years. He knows the local ecology inside out and accepts fire is a natural part of the environment. But he says prescribed burns are not always what the doctor ordered. And to demonstrate his theory, he took us to different sites to compare the effects of a burn.
What we're looking at on this side is the mid-story, the golden wattle, that's in an area that was burnt about 10 years ago. And you can see that there's a proliferation of the golden wattle as a result of the fire. It's been stimulated by the fire. And on the other side there, you can see a contrast of an area that hasn't been burnt for some time that has in fact has very little of the golden wattle in it.
So we've actually got a greater fuel load where the burn-off has occurred?
I believe that's the case in this particular example here, that's for sure.
So we've made the situation worse by burning off?
I think we have, yeah.
He next showed us a spot which last saw a fire 30 years ago, and the fuel reduction has been taken care of by Mother Nature. The message is that the fire risk is greatest in the decade after the burn-off because fire can actually encourage an even stronger growth of new fuel, and there hasn't been a chance for it to be naturally removed.
We shouldn't have a belief that if we're burning, we're absolutely reducing the fire risk by doing so.
It's a stance sure to evoke enormous controversy. Many farmers and firefighters believe prescribed burns are essential to stop further fires.
Our knowledge is evolving. The research over the last decade is certainly highlighting that fire isn't a black or white issue. It's about, what are we trying to achieve, and let's try and use fire in a positive manner for both fuel management as well as biodiversity management.
We do need fires, we need areas to be burnt, and it's inevitable that all areas will be burnt eventually. I think what we need is a mosaic of burning so that we've got some areas that have been burnt and some areas that haven't been.
Kieran Brewer admits he doesn't have all the answers, but he urges landholders to consider they may be doing more harm than good by blazing away.
Today's story comes from the Mount Lofty Ranges near Adelaide in South Australia. The idea behind burn-offs, or controlled burning, is that by carefully burning the bushland in an area, there'll be less fuel for any future uncontrolled fires. Then, if all the dry leaves and branches are burnt carefully, if a bushfire starts, it will have nothing to burn. The fuel of a fire refers to the things that are burnt for energy, things like dead leaves and branches. People have been burning to get rid of this fuel for many years, but not everyone believes it's the answer. Here, the reporter is talking about Kieran Brewer, an expert on the vegetation in the Mount Lofty Ranges.
But he says prescribed burns are not always what the doctor ordered. And to demonstrate his theory, he took us to different sites to compare the effects of a burn.
Kieran says that prescribed burns are not always what the doctor ordered. Prescribed means fixed or set. Prescribed burns refers to burning in a set area. The saying, what the doctor ordered, means exactly what is needed. Kieran thinks that prescribed or controlled burns are not what's needed.
What we're looking at on this side is the mid-story, the golden wattle, that's in an area that was burned about 10 years ago. And you can see that there's a proliferation of the golden wattle as a result of the fire. It's been stimulated by the fire.
This site was burnt about 10 years ago. There's now a proliferation of the golden wattle tree. A proliferation is a sudden growth or increase in number. The fire has stimulated growth of the golden wattle tree. Stimulated means encouraged to grow. So in the burnt off area, the fire has actually made the trees grow faster. Let's have a look at the second area so we can compare them.
And on the other side there you can see a contrast of an area that hasn't been burnt for some time that has in fact has very little of the golden wattle in it.
On the other side, you can see a contrast. A contrast is an obvious difference between two or more things. This area is obviously different. It hasn't been burnt for some time and it has very little golden wattle in it. So burning the area encouraged the golden wattle to grow. What does that mean for bushfires?
So we've actually got a greater fuel load where the burn-off has occurred.
There is a greater fuel load where the burn-off has occurred. A fuel load is a build-up of fuel. The term fuel load is used here to describe a build-up of easily burnt material. The golden wattle burns easily. So more trees of this type will mean more fuel to burn in a bushfire. It'll make a bushfire worse. That's why Kieran says that controlled burns aren't a good way to prevent bushfires.
It's a stance sure to evoke enormous controversy. Many farmers and firefighters believe prescribed burns are essential to stop further fires.
It's a stance sure to evoke enormous controversy. A stance is a position or an attitude. And to evoke means to create or bring about. The idea that controlled burns aren't the answer will create a lot of controversy or argument and disagreement. And that's all for English Bites today. If more English study is essential for you, take a look at our website.